How do you make your way to fighting?
I was going to college at Tuskegee University, and there was a gym in Montgomery that I used to go and work out at, and I saw a couple of guys in the fitness room grappling, and I was like, I played football at the time. I was a middle linebacker, and I was like, what are these guys doing, rolling around on the ground? I'm gonna go in there, I'm gonna smash these guys, and they were considerably lighter than I was, and they just went to town on me. They just made me look really stupid. And from that day, I was like, listen, there's something about this sport I want to get involved in. And ever since then, I've been training.
So you first burst on at least the television scene, kind of a mainstream scene on BET, Iron Ring. Right. Talk about that show a little bit, because I know, it was weird. I don't think that the MMA community, especially the bloggers, jumped on that. Right. But I heard it did massive ratings, which is really important, because I think that's an audience that will come eventually, the African-American audience. But talk about getting on the show and then kind of how the show went.
I got on the show because I attended some tryouts in Atlanta, Georgia. As far as the show is concerned, I don't think a lot of people actually saw the vision that David Isaacs had, who was the executive producer of the show. And pretty much what he's trying to do is he was trying to match up mainstream artists with MMA in order to catapult MMA into the mainstream. That's really the whole premise behind the show. And honestly, I'm really happy that I was involved in it. It was a great show. I got a chance to meet a lot of interesting people, and I got a chance to have some pretty good fights. And I'm definitely proud to come from that. To have that as my background. Right.
Who was the coolest person you got to meet? I told you that we did a little promotion for it on the radio station that I do a show on, and we talked to Ludacris, which is kind of cool. For me, I'm a fan. But there were a lot of big time musicians there. Floyd was involved in it too, right?
Yeah.
Floyd Jr.
Honestly, I actually enjoyed meeting the fighters. They had Floyd Mayweather, who was one of the coaches. And he definitely has a big name. He's not new to fighting.
Yeah.
And
so tell people what Floyd is like, because people get a bad impression of Floyd sometimes with the whole money stuff, but he's one of these guys who has two really different personalities. I think a lot of that is a show, but away from the camera, he's actually a pretty quiet, respectable guy.
Yeah, you know what, I think so, and I think the truth is that everyone has something that they portray, as their showpiece. Everyone has to show, for the camera. But I definitely, he's a very respectable guy. He's a very smart guy, intelligent guy, and he gave me a lot of good advice. So I have nothing but good things to say about him.
All right, so you sign with Elite XC, then it goes under, right? Which had to be kind of crushing, because you're trying to get to that next level. They've got a network TV deal, they've got the Showtime deal. So what was your reaction at the time, and then how tough has it been basically being in limbo? Could you go somewhere else? Did you try to go somewhere else?
Yeah, you know what, actually it was kind of devastating. I was kind of upset about it, because I was actually supposed to be on the November card, the card that was about 3.5 weeks out, and then I found out about them going under, and it was pretty depressing. But I actually fought out in Wisconsin, and I kept training, so I just kept my spirits up, and I kind of knew that someone was going to pick me up, and I just kept myself in shape and just got myself ready for that next opportunity that was going to come along.
So are you exclusive now with Strikeforce, or how does it work in terms of contract?
I don't want to discuss any contract stuff.
Well, no. You know what? I want to ask you this, because UFC is doing their next reality season, and I saw that a lot of former NFL guys are trying to get involved. Rex Richards, who has a pretty good experience, played with the Colts. Marcus Jones, who was a first-round pick with the Bucks, is trying out for the show, or did try out for the show. There was a guy on the Packers who tried out for the show. And as a football player, I just kind of wonder, did you know about it, or just kind of the Strikeforce thing came along first? Hey, you jump at the opportunity you get?
You know what, honestly, I just been pretty focused on training. I'm just happy that I got picked up by Strikeforce, and that's the way it is right now.
All right, good deal. Doesn't want to get into the contract stuff. Hey, so I talked to Brett Rogers yesterday, and he kept looking at me. He's like, I can't believe this guy's fighting me. He's like, he's not much bigger than you. I'm like, yeah, he's a little bigger than me. First of all, I can see you're a little taller, and you probably got about 50 pounds on me, and I have no muscles, and you have muscles. So what's your reaction to a guy who's 6'4", 6'5"? He's clearly, a big heavyweight, calling you out and saying, this guy should be fighting 85. He said you should be fighting 85. He said 205. What's he doing? I'm going to send him back to the smaller divisions.
We'll definitely see tomorrow night, won't we? I'm not one for talk, honestly. I don't really have anything bad to say about him. He's definitely a big guy. But I'm around 240, and I know how to move. My feet aren't really planted in concrete, so we'll see what happens.
Well, we're seeing shorter guys in a lot of these divisions do pretty well. I think that the heavyweight thing is a good question because can guys who are 230, 220 survive against the 260, 265 guys? I guess you're saying based on athleticism, it depends on what the big guy's like. If he's a stiff tree, then the smaller guy can outmove him.
Well, yeah, absolutely. It depends. If you're 265 and you're not very well built and you have about 30 to 40 pounds of excess flab, then, I'm not necessarily speaking about him, but I'm just giving you an example. Then it doesn't really matter if you're 30 pounds over an individual. I think if you're a good 230, 240, that, if you have an athletic build, if you have an athletic nature, I think that you can do very well. I really don't feel that just because you're, taller and you weigh a little bit more that you have the advantage. I don't think that's what martial arts is about.
Right.
I think the whole premise behind martial arts is that you're able to use your skill and your technique, and the person that has the better skill and the better technique is a person who's able to persevere,
Right.
So I never really fell into that, just because a person's bigger or larger or smaller, that they're not going to be able to perform. I mean,
Right.
If you look historically at martial arts, that's not factual.
Yeah.
Martial arts is based on technique, form, skill,
Right.
agility, athleticism. So.
Because clearly we saw that Tim Sylvia at 6'8" and 265 was too big for Fedor.
Well,
Of course, he
right,
got in there quickly and pounded him out. And then once a guy goes down to the ground, he's not 6'5" or 6'7" anymore.
Yeah, absolutely. So,
So what kind of? We haven't seen you fight, outside of the Iron Ring. On this high level, what kind of style do you have? Are you a striker? You a wrestler? You submission guy? Mix?
I'm definitely a striker. I have the ability to do a little bit of all of it. I train with a guy by the name of Gary Brown out of Top of the Line Fitness. He's trained people like Rick Rufus, Issa Mackey, Buster Douglas. I mean, he's a stand-up guy. I actually trained with my ground coach, who's Roberto Travin. Which isn't new to the ground game. So honestly, I really feel comfortable in any position. I prefer to stand up. I like to stand up. I like to strike. If I have to go down to the ground, I'll go down to the ground. But I would prefer to stand up. But honestly, I come from a grappling and jiu-jitsu background. That's my background and my base. I just recently, with the last 4 or 5 years, fell in love with the stand-up game. So I like stand-up. I feel that it's more exciting. I think the public and the crowd wants to see two people, banging it out versus two guys rolling around on the ground for 15 minutes. But